And in the words of Maya Angelou, when you learn, teach, and when you get, give. Hello, welcome to Conversations with Verdel Jones. I'm your host, Verdel Jones. Being an educator at heart, I'm dedicated to sharing conversations that inform and enlighten in the hopes that you learn something that you may not have known. And remember, in the words of Maya Angelou, when you learn, teach, and when you get, give. We have an awesome show planned for you today. I'm really excited to bring this information to you. Now, I want you guys to make sure that you tune in or you go to my YouTube channel, which is Deli Teach, DELITEACH. All of my past shows are there. You could subscribe to it so you'll be notified when any new shows come, when I upload any new shows. So be sure, if you're watching right now also, that you're sharing this video so everybody else can get the information that you're about to receive today. You can also follow me on Twitter at DeliTeach, DELITEACH. So you can also contact me on my website. We're always looking for sponsors. And speaking of which, we have an awesome sponsor, Nancy Vargas Johnson. She is a realtor in the Long Island area. So if you're interested in buying or selling a home, make sure you look up Nancy Vargas Johnson. Here's her contact information. She's great. I always like to share the story that she helped my father sell his father's home. He passed away about a year ago, and she was able to sell his home. We know estate sales could be challenging, emotional, and she was just an expert at getting the transaction done. So we love Nancy, and she's great. So again, if you're looking to sell or buy a home, make sure you look up Nancy Vargas Johnson. So let's get started. You know, one of the things that is so important to me, as I say, I always say every start of the show that I'm an educator. I think, everybody has a purpose in life, and I think my purpose is sharing information. That's why I was a teacher, counselor, and ultimately administrator, because I wanted to have real impact on change. And at the same time, being able to, to share information and enlighten. That's why I feel so strongly about the next guest we're going to have on. I've research his work and what he does, and we're so excited to have him. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about educational access from the point of view of students being at the center of the discussion and of the decision making. So we have Dr. David Heiber. He is a passionate educational keynote speaker and founder of Concentric Educational Solutions, which is located in Washington, D.C. His journey to success has been non-traditional, and he'll be sharing that with us. And he's very passionate about empowering our young people to be the best, their best selves. He's a graduate of Lincoln University. He received his Master's of Arts in African American Studies from Temple University. That's our daughter's college, so we're excited about that too. And he received his doctorate in education in urban education from Morgan State University. So without further ado, we have Dr. Heiber here on the line. So I want to thank him for joining us this evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's get started. One of the things that you do is, a lot of presentations, and in your presentations, I notice you deal a lot with personal and professional growth. What in your life, and it kind of speaks to that non-traditional journey, has led you to be self-motivated and have that self-empowerment?
I mean, I think we all go through crucibles in life, and those are the challenging situations that kind of shape us. Mm-hmm. And some of us go through them early on, some of us go experience them later on in life, or some of us just have multiple ones throughout our lifetime. Looking back, I've been blessed in many ways in that my crucibles have shaped me and my ability and my passion to want to give, not only just give back, but try to seek to understand and be better.
Right.
I grew up very non-traditional. I'm biracial. I was raised by my paternal grandparents who were white. I grew up solidly middle class. or working class, and never knew my biological father, who is African American. And it was through understanding that lens, and then through the death of my grandparents, or who I affectionately refer to as my parents,
Right.
Getting kicked out of 5 high schools and going to prison, and going from being solidly middle class to go to the penitentiary and being around nothing but, well, primarily African Americans, and just seeing a wholly different side of society. And through that process, getting my GED and my high school diploma while I was in prison, and then ultimately being released 6 years early to go to Lincoln University, to go to college. And just seeing how the two very different sides of society, and they shaped me. So although it was definitely tragic that I lost my grandparents at an early age, it allowed me to really experience deprivation, but opportunity at the same time, and the responsibility that we have to meet people where they are and realize that there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all.
Right. And I love that you said meeting people where they are, because that's, being in education, sometimes you may, some people think that people should be at a certain level already, but but that meeting people where they are is so key into really helping and understanding, individuals. So I'm happy that, I love that you said that, because it's so true. I think also in education, that one size fits all does not work. So sometimes we run up against that, as well. Individuals are different. Our children, our students are different. So, realizing that is really, is going to be key. So
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, you also talk about the importance of education, and it's kind of obvious, of course, education is important, but you also say that it gives you power. And, I like to say it gives us choices. So how does education translate into power?
I mean, what education has done for me, and it will continue to do, it allows me to engage in the conversation. And it doesn't guarantee necessarily outcomes, but it allows you at least a seat at the table to have those conversations which impact your life. And I think if it wasn't, matter of fact, I know for a fact, if it wasn't for education, but it wasn't for the people who took ownership of my success and supported me unconditionally, which I think all people need, quite frankly. I wouldn't have the opportunity now. I think that's what speaks to the passion of the work. I'm not unique in that sense. To me, passion is anger and love that are intersected. So I'm angry that this work needs to be done, but I love the work at the same time.
Right.
And it was through, it was not this quick fairy tale of redemption that people think that, I went to prison, got a second chance, and came out, and my life has been this beautiful thing. No, I went to prison multiple times. I had multiple opportunities, but it wasn't, and that's why I say it's not a one-size-fits-all. You meet people where they are. It took me many, many times. It's not, and I think this is the approach that we need to take with young people. You can't do A and expect B, and hopefully you get C across the board. Humans are not like that.
Yes.
And so meeting them where they are is understanding that we are going to consistently make mistakes, but to be unconditional and unapologetic for the support that young people need. And particularly in education, it's funny. I'm not on Facebook, but I'm definitely on LinkedIn, and I like to. It's amazing. I guess there's a lot of great intentions on LinkedIn, but everyone's promoting a brand. It seems like everyone's into their own brand.
Right.
And for me, anyone who says that they are an expert in education, they're lying to themselves and to everybody else, because there are no experts in education. We learn this each and every day when we visit homes and interact with people. What may work in one city with one school, with one student and one family may not work with the next.
That's right.
So I never say we have the answer. I say that we will be at the table to help figure out the solution together.
Right. You had mentioned, in reference to, it took you a while or it took you several, experiences and events in your life to ultimately, to get you where you are today. And prison was part of that journey. And one of the things I did want to talk about was the school to prison pipeline. And we've heard that term, and we hear that term often. And education is important. So if you're saying that, and the statistics will show that Black males and Latino males have a higher rate of that school to prison journey, what first of all, what is the school to prison pipeline from your perspective? Because there's mass incarceration, and we know what that is. We know what that looks like and why that is. But the school to prison pipeline, what is that, and how does it manifest itself when we're looking at our students of color?
No, great question. To me, the school to prison pipeline is the connection, obviously, between what's not happening in schools and then ultimately, unfortunately, a probable destination for the failures of schools.
Right.
And whether you look at the scores for fourth grade literacy, which kind of predicts prison population or building prisons, or the fact that for students to be disengaged and how disengagement and being chronically absent will feed into the prison population. I think what we have got to be really clear about is that for the most part, our educational system is delayed. It's one of the very few social institutions that it has not caught up to the broader society.
Absolutely.
And what I mean by that is that students are bored. Every single we were just in school 2 days ago, and students were, and this is within the first 6 days of school, students were being put out of class.
Wow.
And it was just because they were bored.
Right.
One student was put out of class because he was flipping his hat around.
Right.
And when I listened to him speak to the administrator that he was sent to, and he just said, we've been doing the same activity for 6 days.
Right.
Basically.
Right.
And so it's ridiculous.
It is. And the thing is, it's giving the teachers the tools to realize that that's not the issue. That's not, the kid flipping his hat, that's no reason to send a child out of the class. But at the same time,
Absolutely.
The child probably wanted to leave the class because they were bored.
No, absolutely. There was a group of students in the same school that school started last Monday. They were skipping class on Wednesday. They didn't leave school grounds. They went into another teacher's classroom.
Right.
And that teacher's classroom was engaging.
Right. Exactly.
And they wanted to suspend those students. No, you don't suspend those students.
Right.
The problem is we have to increase the engagement and the rigor in the classroom.
Right.
Where students feel part of the educational process. I think one of the major flaws that we have, particularly for young people, is we expect them to have the emotional intelligence and the cognitive wherewithal to be able to have a delayed response that we as adults don't have.
Right. Exactly.
So we're saying do this, and this for 12 years, and maybe on the after 12 years or after 16 years, you'll get the gratification.
Right.
And we're not having the gratification during the process.
Right. And you know what? You talk about the students being bored and how we haven't caught up. So I would often have this discussion, education was developed, to produce workers during the, industrial age. And we really have not changed since then.
Absolutely. I had a long conversation, and I think he's probably one of the most brilliant educators. I want to say young, but only because he's younger than me.
Right.
But I think he's a modern-day thinker around education. Dallas Dance, the former superintendent of Baltimore County.
Okay.
One of the most brilliant educators that I've had the pleasure to be around. And he said something very profound, which is very true. It makes sense, and it's common sense, but not so common. Is that even our generation, my generation, between the 30s and the 40s, our parents are teaching us always go to college and get a job,
right?
Not work for ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right? They want us to be a part of the system that we were never intended to leave.
Right.
Right. So I mean, it's perpetual. Like I was meeting with some educators 2 days ago, and I just said, "Have you ever thought about doing this on your own?"
Mm-hmm.
But the mere fact of not getting a check every week or every 2 weeks,
it's scary.
And experiencing the unknown, it's so scary to them that they won't even try to do it.
It's true. It's true. And I think,
right.
And just,
go ahead.
And being in that, being an educator for so long and not wanting to take the risk because it is risky. But in not taking that risk, a lot of times what happens is you become complacent, you become part of that system, and you're thinking long term. In my mind, it's like, well, 8 years from now, I get a pension. I don't know what'll happen if I take a chance and really do the things that I want to do to help students, or do something different, I should say, what that looks like. So it's very scary.
No, absolutely. And I mean, but, in urban education, and so this is what we've seen now for 7 years, and I say matter-of-factly, but it's just from my experience, is that for the most part, all this reform in urban education, so take away the term urban, we're talking about, for the most part, black and brown children and poor white children. All right? Predominantly white organizations are making millions of dollars off black and brown children.
Right, absolutely.
Predominantly white organizations are making millions of dollars off black and brown children. And it's insane. I was working with one school district. I probably will never, get a contract with that school district again because I don't know who they're talking about. Is that 4 white males who collectively had 15 years of principal or administrative experience, they got a $2.3 million contract to train principals.
What? And they had 15 years between 3.
from New York, and they're from New York.
Wow.
The company was from New York. Had never owned a company, had never demonstrated any type of effectiveness as their own entity, and got a $2.3 million contract.
Wow.
That's unheard of.
That is.
It would not have happened to a black-owned company.
Wow. And that blows my mind to think that, it's very interesting, but I can definitely believe that, because here you have individuals who collectively don't have enough experience that one principal should have to do this work, and they're able to get, and make that kind of money, and they're able to do that. So it's very interesting. And, as far as the, the notion of our parents telling us you need to get a job, stay at that job, and go to the end, I think with our younger generation, they see it, they're looking at it a little bit differently. I don't know, and you work with a lot of students, and I'm seeing that they see it a little bit differently. No, they are. And what's happening is, unfortunately, is we're trying to bring them back into the box, or the box that we've been sold. Right. And they're going against that. Yes. No, they don't want to be. They don't want to be pushed back into that box. Right. I'll share a story. Our son, he's a filmmate. He graduated already. He graduated from Emerson College, and he majored in film. So my husband and myself, we're thinking, he's graduating. Okay, you need to get that 9-to-5 job so you can make some money. He's thinking totally differently. He's thinking about freelancing and independent work and just a totally different view of what we kind of, grew up with.
No, I know, absolutely. So, I mean, for example, in particularly affluent white communities, people who, young people who graduate high school are encouraged to do a gap year. And we know this in the African American community now because of former President Obama's family, right? Right, Malia, so to do the gap year. Right. Yeah, right, to go ahead and do that. But, white parents have been encouraging their children to do that forever. Yes. Go experience the world. Go out and see and broaden your experience. Right. And so, again, we are conditioned to push our young people right into a box as opposed to exploring their natural talent.
Right, exactly, and the talents are so vast. I'm amazed with all of our young people. It's just amazing the things that they, that they can do, the ideas that they have. And, it kind of goes, it's in line of what, the kind of work that you're doing in helping individuals realize that these students do have these gifts and they do have these skills, and not to put them in a box.
Absolutely.
And I would imagine that some of the work that you do.
Yeah, and so what we do is when we conduct our home visits, and we just listen, and we don't try to necessarily inform. We're listening from their perspective in the comfort of their own home, just what the things that they need. Right. And it's through the listening process that and we really learned it from Freeman Hrabowski's work, where we just listen. So we're not trying to solve the issue. So Dr. Hrabowski always says you need the ALA, ask, listen, and then act. But act needs to be the last piece of it. You need to listen first. And so we really took that seriously, and that's part of our model.
Right. And, let's just jump right into it. I mean, I love the discussion we're having. So let me just say that your company, Concentric Educational Solutions, this is the type of work that you do. We have a screenshot of your website. So, and then at the end, we'll let people know how they can get in contact with you. But explain what your company is about and what you guys do and how you help schools and why. I know it's a lot, and why you decided to take on this work.
So, I mean, again, I appreciate the opportunity to really talking about it. So, the Concentric is really the company name for my theory of action or change. So, when I was at Temple, I had the benefit of sitting with Molefe Asante, the modern-day father of Afrocentricity. Okay. And so he really took a lot of the work from Pan-Africanism, a lot of early work that Du Bois was doing, a lot of the work that was happening around the Black Power movement and the Civil Rights movement, and he coined the term Afrocentricity. And Afrocentricity, it simply means putting African Americans or Africans of the diaspora at the center of social phenomena. So as I went through many of his courses, and I was in the school system, we really talked about what would it look like to put students at the center of school phenomena, right? So and school operations. So that's where concentricity came from. It just means putting the student at the center of school phenomena, which sounds simple, but it doesn't happen. Right. Usually, the students are not at the center of the process. Right. And so from there, that's where we came up with the work.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because we always hear, this is a child-centered learning environment. The students are the focus, and you said it doesn't happen. So explain what that actually looks like. What does that mean for real, not in just theory, but what does that mean and what does that look like?
That means, so the question that has, the primary question for us that has to guide almost every decision is what's in the best interest of children. Right. And I know we say that on the surface level, but digging down all the way to budget. Right. Right. So to me, your priorities, a reflection of your priority will be where your resources are put. Right. If our students are not even given the foundation and the conditions are not even set for student achievement, then students likely will not be successful. We have got to set the foundations where students can be successful. And I think part of that inquiry is to say, are we doing things in the best interest of the children? And a lot of times we don't do that. Right. It's really adult-centered.
Adult-centered, absolutely.
And so we have to staff correctly. We have to we can't bring in people or vendors just to do the work because it sounds good. No, we have got to be able to do the work that's at the heart of what student-centered learning is and student-centered support looks like. And that's the very first thing that we ask any school district or any school that we work with is before we sign any contract, we have those conversations. And if it doesn't sound like that we can make the impact or the school needs us, then we'll walk away and we say that, like, you don't need us. Right. But in this predatory world of business, organizations won't do that. They'll try to make it fit just to make the money. Right,
exactly. Not knowing really where they fit in and not caring where they fit in as far as helping, the district to progress and to move forward.
Yeah, no, and I'll give you a tangible example. I was doing work, and I can say this now because I'm not doing work there anymore. I was doing work with in Detroit.
Okay.
And if I'm not talking about Detroit 2017, what it looks like now. I'm talking about Detroit as it's been going through its renaissance or resurgence.
Okay.
And if I'm from Maryland or the D.C. area, and it's cold, but that's not Detroit. Cold is different. Yeah, like when it snows, it snows, and school's not canceled. And so we were in the schools every single day, and we were seeing young people in 0-degree weather coming in just a hooded sweatshirt. And what I simply said to every vendor there, and I was at the executive cabinet, and I simply said, every vendor here should donate 10% of their gross contract back to the schools, so that the schools can buy supplies and buy what's necessary for young people.
Right.
And when I made that statement, and for transparency, my contract was for $248,000. So I would have given back $24,800 to go back to the schools. But when I made that statement, and it's not I'm a better than now, it's just a moral consciousness of where I've come from. They looked at me like I was crazy.
Wow.
Why, if you're a vendor and you're in the building and you're working with these young folks who come from very general needs and need a lot of support, why wouldn't you want to give back your contract?
Exactly.
For a portion of your contract, if it's not about the money.
Right. Right. And now,
so that's what we talk about when we talk about students at the heart of the decision making.
Okay. Right. And that's the thing. Everything that why are we there? That's the bottom line.
Absolutely.
Why are we there? If it's not for the kids, why are we there? I've taken. Go ahead.
It's amazing. No, I was working with another school system, and this is not a whistleblower exposing. It's questioning: are students really at the center of what we're doing?
Right.
So we know that our students, many of our students and the families need additional support. The schools are bare bones. They're operating with a basic budget. And I was in one school system, and they paid a guest speaker $75,000 to speak. And I don't know words are worth $75,000 in my opinion. No matter who says them.
Right. Was it Colin Powell or like?
There's no words that important.
Right. Wow.
And I'm trying to think. So you see children who are coming from poverty, and we're paying someone $75,000. So whether it was $75,000 or $50,000 or $25,000, no words are worth that.
No words, right? Exactly. When you're in a situation like that, but that's the thing. They do have budgets, and it's exactly what you said. It's where you choose, where a district chooses to put that money. Is the resources going to go to the students, or is it going to go to, someone else? And that's, that's the question. That's unbelievable.
No, I mean, it was just amazing. So when I hear urban school districts talk about we don't have the money and stuff like that, and then I see something like that being spent. Right. Like that's not in the best interest of children. It's just not.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, as a education, as a leader in education, one of the things that when anyone comes to me with anything, the first question is, well, how does it benefit the students? What's in it for them? What's in it for them?
And so, I mean, in this space, and I'm clear, like, yes, I'm an educator first, a business person second. Do we want to make a profit? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But not at the expense of what we're depriving children.
Right. So
no, I mean, I was in a school today, and just simple things. I mean, the young man was acting out because he was hungry.
Wow.
He was just hungry.
And let me ask you a question. When you go into schools, because you've gone to several schools and you've worked. I mean, you've been at this. You've been working. Your company, I think, is 7 years old.
Yes.
And you've been going into different schools. What do you find the expectations or the perceptions of those you work with, and then the students and the parents? So when you do those home visits, what are the perceptions of the parents, and what are the perceptions of the individuals, or the school district, I should say?
So one of the things that we strongly suggest is that we ask the question, what's the difference between sympathy and empathy? And to us, a very simple definition is that empathy is sympathy, but with accountability. So we want to have empathy for our young people, but not sympathize with them.
Okay.
Because the world doesn't care, right? You still have to hold them accountable, but at the same time understand the challenges that they've gone through.
Okay.
One of the two major factors that we've seen is that one, and it's very true, it's kind of cliche, is that we don't have high expectations of our children. We need to have higher expectations of our children, and we need to have higher expectations of our parents to support what's happening in the schools.
Right.
So some of the schools that we're working on right now is educating the parents that we really need your help.
Okay.
But more importantly, if we are trained professionals, and this is the disconnect, right? We will I think we too easily say parents don't care. I disagree with that.
Me too.
I have not done one home visit where a parent says, I don't care.
Right.
If you're struggling as a teacher who has gone to college, attained a degree, and you can't figure out how to reach this young person, well, a parent when I'm a parent of 3 children, there's no preparation that I've ever had that could prepare me to be a good parent.
Right.
I'm still figuring out on a daily basis.
Right.
Right? We have to work together to try to figure it out.
Absolutely. You know, and with parents, sometimes, teachers think that parents don't care. They think that they don't want to be involved. They don't want to be engaged. Does any of the work that you do involve really showing teachers that that's not the case? And if so, how do you do that? How are you able to let teachers know that?
When we're asking the questions of the parents, and it's almost like the old storybook. I mean, our home visit model is very ethnographic in the sense that we immerse ourselves, and it's very conversational. So it's not this, and it's semi-structured. So it's not, we ask 10 questions and we leave. It's more so having conversations, and depending upon what the answers are, it guides the conversation. It's organic in that sense.
Right.
And so what we then do is we bring that information back to the teachers, to the staff members, and a lot of times they just don't know.
Right.
And so it's helping to inform the staff members what the parents are thinking, what they're experiencing, that they may not know. So it's not that they don't care. There's a lot of priorities. How am I going to feed my family? How am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to go to work?
And in turn,
and so it's sharing that information with everyone.
So in turn, when you are sharing this data and information with the staff and administrators and all of that, what is at that point, what is their responsibility? What do they need to do? Do you prescribe what should be done? I'm sure it's collective, collaborative, I should say. But what have you found districts, are they resistant? I wouldn't think they would be resistant because they're calling you in, but then again.
No, there have been some instances where they really don't want to hear the solution or the context of it. I was with one of my mentors, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, and I was going through some of the frustration that I was having with one particular district, and he asked me a very important question. He said, "Did you ever think they don't want to get better?" Wow. And I was like, wow, like that really, like I had to think about it.
Right.
And I was taken back by it because, you push so hard, and as you're pushing, you're thinking you're a partner in this work, and then you get so much pushback about what you're trying to do. And so there have been instances like that, but overwhelmingly, the support has been welcomed and encouraged, and the discourse and the collaboration is something that they just don't have the capacity to do. So, one of the things that we always say is that, home visits are nothing new.
Right.
Particularly before integration, when your teacher lived right next door to you, the home visits happen very organically.
Absolutely.
But we just have the bandwidth to be able to do thousands of home visits a week.
Wow.
And bring that information back.
Wow. So what are some solutions that, or what are some things that schools can, implement? I know it's going to depend on the schools, but in general, what can schools, what can administrators, what can teachers do because the ultimate goal is success of the students. And,
absolutely.
And so what are some things that they can do? I mean, I'm in the, a guidance counselor. I'm the director of guidance. And, so I really am passionate about the social and emotional well-being of, the whole child. So I know that must come into play. But what can schools do as, in general to foster that relationship and make sure that their students, are succeeding?
So one of the things I think is really important, and it sounds like a simple solution, but it's just a part of the larger piece, is really listening to parents and students of what they need as opposed to thinking we know what they need.
Yeah.
So what happens is I always look at data as two parts, quantitative and qualitative, and that's two types of data. But a lot of times we always talk about data-driven decisions, but what we'll do is we'll look at numbers and then we'll jump to the solutions right away, and then we get frustrated when we don't get the intended outcome.
Exactly.
I think what we need to do is understand the context of where those numbers are coming from.
Yeah.
And that's where everyone has a story. And so I just encourage schools, a very good way to get an authentic plan of action is to listen and ask questions around the numbers.
Ask questions around the
Acting on numbers alone will not give you the correct course of action. We got to listen and understand the stories behind it.
Right, and dig deeper into that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I know you also talk to organizations and schools and universities and colleges, and what have you learned about people's perceptions of the potential within them? I know you speak about the 3 Ps: potential, promise, and purpose. And if you could just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I just really encourage people is that to me, understanding your potential is that we're all good at something, and we always haven't necessarily recognized or tapped into it or understood it, or we've resisted against it.
Right.
I think really having that deliberate reflection of what are those things that we're good at, and everyone is good at something, if not multiple things. But really listening to that inner voice of what are you good at innately. So I think that's the first step. So that's the potential piece. The promise piece is that's the work that you have to put into it. There's a brother out there I had an opportunity to listen to and meet, Dr. Eric Thomas, and he speaks about this all the time. And, there are people who are motivational speakers. I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm not going to inspire you for the most part or change your life. I'm just going to share my life story.
Right.
And that my outcome has been every single time that I've kept on going, even in the face that I didn't think that I could make it, things work out.
Yeah.
And it's the constant grind, but you have got to put the effort. And I tell my young frat brothers this all the time. People will see the output. They don't see the input. They don't see the sleepless nights.
Right.
They don't see the early mornings.
Yep.
They don't see the constant refinement of it. And you have got to want it. Eric Thomas talks about you have to want it more than you breathe. You have got to dig deep and put a lot of work and hours into whatever it is that will help your purpose. I mean, your promise.
Right.
Whether Malcolm Gladwell calls it the 10,000 hour rule, whether people call it the grind nation, the hustle is real, whatever the case may be, it's really putting a lot of time into it. And to me, the purpose is got to be bigger than yourself. It's and there's some people out there on YouTube that talk about it and stuff like that, and they say it much better than I do. Is that your why has got to be bigger than your what?
Okay.
And to me, my why, and a lot of people, and I push back on this for educators. People say my children,
right?
When they're referring to their students, and here's why I fundamentally disagree with that. They're not my children, right? They're someone else's child,
right?
Right. To me, there are 3 people that I would label that I would give my life to, and those are my 3 children. And so I challenge educators to say, well, are they your children? Would you give your life for your students? Now, if you are, you're better than I am. But I would give my life for my three three children.
Right.
And the reason I say that is when I first came into education, I wanted to save the world. Mm-hmm. And that's too overwhelming.
It's overwhelming, right.
What I found out now in my 40s is I don't want to save the world. I want to provide for my children and save my three children. Mm-hmm. In that effort, if I can empower them to do more, my role is to empower them to do more.
Right.
And when I look at it that way, it's doable. Mm-hmm. And I can attain it because I can influence my three children.
Right, exactly. You know, it goes...
So my purpose is being the best father I can be.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was reaching out to an organization to share with them some information about, you know, students getting into college and working with... The organization worked with the students and, you know, and helping them get into college. So my thing is working with the parents and giving them the tools and the knowledge and the information so they can ask the right questions of people. And one of the organizations that I reached out to, they didn't really want to hear what I was saying, because they said that they were, my book is called A Parent Agent, and they said that they were their kids, you know, in that organization's parent agent. And I thought to myself, that's really interesting. Because, you know, the parents, you know, and I want to talk a little bit about what parents can do and how we can help them and support them. You know, the parents are with their children, as you said, that's their responsibility, and that's who they want to develop, and that's who they want to see, you know, be successful. And,
yes.
You know, for that organization to tell me that, I'm like, well, so do you just discount the parents and their input? You know, it was just very bizarre. But how can we support our parents? How can we help them in education and helping their students to be able to, or their children to be successful?
Well, I think it's really being authentic and opening up and asking parents the questions about what do they see for their children, what type of supports do they need, and even if they can't necessarily articulate the type of supports that they need, they can probably articulate for the most part some of the challenges that they have, and then we can start kind of filling the gap.
Right.
I think a lot of times parents aren't able to articulate what it is that they need.
Yeah.
And that's our job as a professional to help them articulate it.
Right.
And say what the school has and what's the accessibility. And so one of the things that we do with schools is when we take all this data, when we bring all this data back, it gives us a clear picture of what is actually needed, and to align what is actually needed for parents compared to what the school can actually offer. You
know, I like to say parents don't know what they don't know. So if we're not out there,
absolutely.
Right, if we're not out there giving them the information and the resources and the tools to be able to help them to get to that point, they might not be engaged because they just don't know, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, you know, start at the... working with kids and trying to get them to be successful with the ultimate goal of having them graduate high school and beyond, post-secondary education, whatever that might look like for them. When is it too late, or is it ever too late? You know, when should schools really identify, you know, what's going on with their kids and how to help them and how to be able to make sure that they're successful and they stay in school and that they, you know, can graduate?
I think that schools really need to be organized more in the preventive measure. I think what happens is that schools, unfortunately, we are too reactive and not proactive. We always talk about intervention. And intervention is always, I mean, for example, theoretically, what we should be doing in the summertime with home visits is gathering information. But a lot of times our work doesn't start until, or we don't get engaged with school systems until October and November, when students have already missed 15 and 20 and 30 days.
Yes.
And we're saying, no, like there's a lot of predictors that we can look at beforehand to get out and get that information so that we can put a plan in place before it occurs. So I don't think it's a question of ever being too early. I think we need to be proactive and gather as much information about our students as possible so that every single student can have a plan of support.
Right. And that's really what it is. It's supporting, that student. I know you had shared, I was listening to an interview you had given a little while ago, and you had talked about doing a home visit, and the student, when you went to the home, the parent was saying that the child didn't have their medication. And
yes,
and that's so interesting. And nobody, in the school really was aware of what was going on with this child. And and you went. It took a home visit to really find out what's going on. And it just fascinates me that those types of things really do go on.
I mean, so part of the process, and this is why I push back across the board to people when we talk about, like, when everyone says they do home visits and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, so, like, fine. Like, to me, like, the home visits are not the answer. They're a part of it, right?
It's a part of it,
but I say to them, our framework is what I'm most concerned with. So with that story that I often tell, that's exactly what happened. So we ask schools what students should get a home visit. And sometimes the data is qualitative, sometimes it's quantitative.
Okay, right.
But then we sit down, we'll get a list of students, and we'll say, okay, the predictors are attendance, grades, behavior. That goes all the way back to Comer in the 70s.
Right,
So, but before we do any home visit, we will get everyone together, all the stakeholders, whether it's at the grade level or whether it's at the admin level, whether it's at the student support team level, core team, problem-solving team, what have you level, and we say, okay, what do we know about this student? Then we conduct the home visit. A lot of times we'll just do home visits. No, like, to us, that's not a good model. The model should be, these are the numbers, this is what it's telling us, but now let's get everyone together and talk about what we collectively know about that student. So with that incident, when we did the home visit and the grandmother told us, he hasn't been quote unquote acting right since she couldn't afford his medication, we brought that information back to the team. Now, there is no reason that this student who was 17 in the 9th grade for the 3rd time, that information somehow should not have come up in year 1, 2, or 3.
2 or 3. Absolutely. And it's just, and like I said, when I heard that story, I was just so shocked because, where was the child study team? Where was the really investigating, like, what's going on? Is it because there's too many students that have issues that they don't really have the support to be able to address this? I don't think it's that they don't they don't care, but have you found that it's mostly because they don't have the support? It's clearly a lack of, for the most part, support.
Right. And so what we're trying to work with schools on, I mean, is just think about it differently. So, one of the things that one of my mentors often says is that as adults, we're dumb smart. Like, we're so intellectual that sometimes we don't see the simple answer.
Exactly.
And so the question I ask is to all schools when we're doing a professional development or the initial conversation is, what makes a home visit successful? And they will give me all these in-depth answers.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, like, that's really deep. But the first thing that makes a home visit successful is someone has to be home.
Right. Right.
Right, like, you have to have that. And I very rarely get that. I get all these really intellectual answers. Yeah, can someone just be home first?
Right.
And then we take it from there.
Right.
The reason I say that is home visits are conducted. We conduct 100% of our home visits after 4 p.m. And on Saturdays and Sundays.
Right.
When most people are home.
When most people are home. Right, exactly. I'm going to coin a phrase that Joe Madison always says, put it where the ghost can get it. You got to make it plain and simple.
I'm in some of these conferences and people are using 5-syllable words when you can just use one.
Right.
1 syllable. It's okay.
Absolutely. So
we won't think less of you. It's okay.
No, they sure won't, and everybody will understand.
Yes. And so I had this conversation in a school today, and The comment was, what I'm going to say to you is nothing new. It will not make you say, aha.
Mm-hmm.
It's very simple, practical things.
That's right. That's it.
So if you're looking for me to say something really profound, you probably won't get it.
Right, right. Yeah, it's easy. But it's, you know what, it's easy. It's putting it in action. You know, that's the, I think that's where, you know, when the rubber hits the road, so to speak, you know?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, you know, one of the things as we start thinking, when we start having conversations with students who have challenges, right? Mm-hmm. We simply say to a school, when I go into a school to do a needs assessment or just ascertain what's going on, I say to them, what makes a tier 3 student, mm-hmm. right, in your RTI process?
Right, mm-hmm. Yep.
And I get all these intellectual answers.
Right.
And I'm like, because the RTI or MTSS is this 150-page document that no one reads.
Right.
And I simply say to them that, to me, RTI is a student who has attendance. A tier 3 student mm-hmm. has attendance issues, academic issues, and behavior issues.
Right.
Why? Because they're in all 3 categories.
Right.
So it's a tier 3 student.
Okay.
Now, once we get the foundation together, now we can go into the deeper metrics.
Mm-hmm. Of it, yes.
But let's start. Just make it
basic.
Real simple for me
Mm-hmm.
first.
Exactly.
How do you define a tier 3 student? They're in all 3 categories.
They're in all 3 categories. Yeah. And that doesn't get easier than that. So.
No.
Before we, because I have a couple minutes before I let you go, I want to, if you could just share with us collectively, you know, as a society, what can individuals do? I always like to say, you know, we all have gifts. We, you know, we can complain about things and talk about things, but, you know, it's like, what are you going to contribute? What are you going to do? So as individuals, what are if you could give me one thing that we can do to make, you know, the lives of our students better, what would you say?
Listen. Listen first, act second.
Okay. Well,
right. Listen first, act second. Mm-hmm. I think that's the first thing. Second thing is that there are, and I go back to what I said earlier. There are no experts.
Right.
I mean, we can't expect students to get it 1, 2, 3, or 3 strikes and you're out. If that's
right.
the case, I know for myself I would not be here.
That's right.
Today. So it's I mean, it's really listen first.
Mm-hmm. So we are, like I said, we're just about out of time. I want to, where can people reach out to you, contact you? If we have any educators, administrators out there who are interested in, you know, finding out more about the work you do, how can they reach you? I'm going to put up some information, but what's the best way for them to be able to contact you?
Absolutely. So there's always, you can go through my our website, Concentric's website, which is concentriced.org, mm-hmm. which is concentriced.org. And my email is linked to my website, but more importantly, and it goes back to the theme of being simple. Mm-hmm. All they have to do is call me.
Okay.
Right, 202-330-1753, and feel free to put my number up there.
Okay.
It's amazing. Like, people get really quote unquote important, and they'll be like, well, you know, call my secretary. We'll
right.
find the time. No, just call me.
Okay.
Like, it's okay. It's okay. You can call me. I might not, you know, but I promise I'll get back to you as soon as possible. I know it's not going to be 3 months down the line.
Okay.
I don't have time for a 2-minute phone call.
Right. Well, Dr. Heiber, I want to thank you so much for joining us. It's been a delight speaking with you. I love the work that you're doing and the way that you present the information. It's just, I'm just really, I really appreciate all you do for our students. So I want to thank you very, very much for being here.
Thank you, and let's continue to do what you do. I appreciate you so much, and thanks for having me.
Okay, take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I want to, again, Dr. Heiber was great, a lot of information. Make sure that you reach out to him. His contact information, we flash for you. And I also want to thank our sponsor, Miss Nancy Vargas Johnson, expert realtor. If you're looking to buy or sell a home, make sure you look her up. And I also want to thank everybody for watching today. And be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I will see you next time. Have a good one.